A big ol' nope. You are not intolerant to gluten. So let me explain. You'll find this really interesting. Gluten intolerance and non-celiac gluten sensitivity, they do appear to be a real thing, but 4 out of 5 studies found that 4 out of 5 people who identify as having gluten intolerance don't actually have it. They're fine with gluten. So then what's going on, right? Because for sure, these people do experience food sensitivities and intolerance, don't get me wrong, but it's not actually gluten. So I want to explain to you what it is, because when you understand that, you're not powerless to it. You can actually do something about it. My name is Joe. I'm a university trained dietitian. Myself and my team are the world's leading online dietitian consulting company. We're helping clients primarily with their digestive disorders. So if you are convinced that gluten's causing your issues, but you tested negative for celiac disease, this video is for you. If you are cutting out gluten, but it doesn't always relieve your symptoms and you just have unexplained symptoms, definitely please pay attention to this video. Or maybe you are restricting gluten and it helps, but then you feel so restricted and miserable that you often go on these binges where you sort of like, well, screw it, I'm gonna do whatever, and then you get bad symptoms, and then you start over again, and you're in this really bad cycle, and it just keeps going and going. Please make sure you stick around. Because at the end, I have a free food list that is related to what I'm gonna talk about, and it's really gonna help you get started. So, fun fact, there was a study that looked at those who thought they had gluten intolerance or non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And so what the researchers are doing is they're giving them either gluten-containing foods or not that are masked very similar and not telling them either way what's going on. And I don't think this was the only study, but this is the one that I had written about and that I remember. And only 16% of the participants actually responded to having gluten consistently. So the majority of subjects, like 84%, were either having gluten-containing foods, but it was masked very well, and not having any reactions, although everyone identified as someone who's gluten intolerant, or they were having symptoms to foods that didn't have any gluten in them. And it's research like this, which is why we have the number that it's about 4 out of 5 of those who think they're sensitive to gluten, they're not. So what's going on, right? Because there's no doubt that they do have food sensitivities typically. It's just not gluten. Gluten is a protein, and it's just become the scapegoat, and the media's told you, and celebrities have said that, and it's popular diet, I suppose, gluten-free. What we know from evidence-based research is that it's not gluten, which is a protein. Most people are actually reacting to fructans, which are a type of FODMAP. You might have heard of FODMAPs. FODMAPs are a short-chain carbohydrate. Because we have very complex carbohydrates, we have very short-chain carbohydrates. Gluten is a protein, right? We have protein, carbs, fat, right? These are different macronutrients. So gluten is a protein. It's nothing to do with the protein. It's the carbohydrates. In particular, the short-chain ones, which are FODMAPs. In particular, of the FODMAPs, we have fructans, because fructans are very common in wheat and barley and rye, which is, if you think about flour, anything that, if I say what's a food with gluten, we're going to think like bread, pasta, biscuits, things like that. These foods are yes, they contain gluten, the protein, but they also contain a high quantity of fructans. And this is what the majority of people are reacting to, not the gluten. Now, don't get me wrong, fructans and FODMAPs, they're good for you. For the average person, they're really good for you. They help feed the good bacteria in your gut. But if you're sensitive, they can cause all sorts of digestive issues and symptoms and pain, and we need to manage them accordingly. For the record, fructans are not just in wheat-containing foods. They're also in a lot of vegetables, which are good for us. So, for example, garlic and onion. Okay, also like legumes, like lentils, beans and things. Fruits as well for sure. Watermelon is a big one. So think about, do you suspect garlic or onion or legumes? Or maybe if you eat a lot of watermelon, do you get an upset stomach? Does it trigger digestive symptoms? If so, because those foods I've just named, they don't have gluten in them, but you are reacting. The common denominator with the legumes, with garlic and onion, with the watermelons, with the bread and pasta, biscuits, whatever, is the fructans. Hopefully this is a little bit of a aha moment for you, because this is what I'm saying. Gluten is not your issue. You're not sensitive to gluten. Yes, gluten-free wheat products, gluten-free bread, for example, does help. Now you might argue, well, when I eat gluten-free wheat, I'm better, I'm fine, I tolerate it. Therefore, it's the gluten. Actually, what happens is the process of removing gluten actually strips away the majority of the fructans in the wheat as well. And therefore, yes, you're eating gluten-free bread, but it could also be called low fructan bread. And that's why it helps you. And it goes without saying that if you have celiac disease, potentially some other autoimmune issues, then gluten, the protein, yeah, absolutely, it can be the problem. And in the case of celiac disease, it is the major culprit. But I'm talking about the vast majority of the population. So as I've said in the beginning, if you've been struggling with symptoms and gluten-free is just not really cutting it for you, you may want to explore FODMAPs, in particular the fructans, as being your issue. So that could be, for example, just cutting out garlic and onion from your diet first for a couple of weeks. That includes not just the vegetable, but the powders are used in a lot of prepackaged foods and sauces and things like that. So you need to be a little bit meticulous about what you're having, but you could see if that helps. Intentionally reduce the fructans and see. Or you could do a full-fledged low FODMAP diet. You should be doing that with a dietitian. You should only be doing that if you've had quite severe issues for a long time. That's obviously what we're helping our clients with. We help them determine if they should use a FODMAP diet and to what extent, to go through that process, or or maybe it isn't even FODMAPs and you're reacting to something else. There is obviously a lot of different compounds in foods. So it can be a tricky area to navigate by yourself, for sure. So if you want help, that's what we do. But I want you to know that it's typically not gluten, and if you want to sort of explore fructans yourself, I would start with garlic and onion and removing that from your diet and seeing how you feel. As a dietitian, though, I have to say you absolutely want to be reintroducing garlic and onion in their whole vegetable form if you can. Like I said before, they're really good for you. Obviously they have other nutrients, but they feed the good bacteria in your gut, which we want more of. So to restrict foods unnecessarily is not good for your health long term, your gut microbiome. So you want to be very strategic about it. That's why we help our clients do that, because it's not so straightforward, as you're probably aware with food intolerance. Okay, so if this resonated with you and you're interested to explore low FODMAP a bit, I do have a food list, like I mentioned at the start, that you could certainly take a look at and go from there. If you want that list, just comment FODMAP food list, FODMAP, FODMAP food list. Comment that, I can send it to you, or you can direct message it to me also. I can look for your message there and send you that guide for free. I hope this video was useful. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like. That would be very much appreciated. You could share the video with someone who you feel might find this useful. And of course, follow us or subscribe for more videos.